Good afternoon and welcome. On behalf of Brookings India, I welcome all of you, and a special welcome to Honorable Chief Minister Srimati Vasundhara Raje India, to Ms. Vrinda Sarup, to the author Urvashi Sahni, and other guests who have joined us on this very happy occasion. The author is a non-resident fellow of Global Economy and Development, the same part of the organization which I also am linked to, in addition to being executive director at Brookings India here. We have our chairman, Vikram Mehta, also present. And what I would like to do now is to invite the Honorable Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Ms. Vrinda Sarup and Ms. Urvashi Sahni on stage to begin the process of the book launch by the Honorable Chief Minister. So Ms. Sahni, I request you now to come, say a few words and invite, then we'll invite the Honorable Chief Minister to launch the book.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for coming, and thank you, Madam Chief Minister, for having come. This was really very gracious of you. And of course, my old friend Vrinda, thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Deepta, for taking the time to be the discussant. Most importantly, thank you for my family and friends that have shown up in good strength. Thanks very much. Before I say a few words, I just want to say that even though I'm the author of the book is really a community book. And my entire Prerna team has taken great pride in it, and when it came, you should have seen. It was, I was afraid they would tear it to bits because everyone was grabbing. And then I have with me two of our alum, Sunita Singh and Monica Nogia. They were my alum and now they are my colleagues. They are working with us at Digital Study Hall, and we have a surprise for you. They made a little film on the book, which I think they would like to introduce and show before we have the book launch.
हेलो एवरीवन, हमारी जो बुक है रीचिंग फॉर द स्काई, उसमें हम लोग ने शॉर्ट फिल्म बनाई है 4 मिनट्स की, जिसमें हम लोगों ने पूरा कैमरा वर्क किया है, इंटरव्यू लिए हैं सभी के। हमारे स्कूल की प्रिंसिपल हैं, हमारी उर्वशी मैम है, और जो हम लोग ने एडिटिंग की है उसमें हमारे ऑफिस के आनंद सर एंड सिद्धार्थ भैया हैं, उन्होंने हमारी हेल्प की है। तो आनंद सर तो अभी हमारे साथ ही हैं यहाँ पर, तो अब वीडियो के थ्रू हम अपने सारे व्यूज़ आपके साथ शेयर करना चाहते हैं।
In 2003, what we learned was that education is not neutral of class, gender or caste. All of these things impact education, its content, its process and the organization. And so we should be mindful of these and try to contextualize our education practices in the lives of the students that we deal with. So that is the way in which Prerna is unique, because it focuses on girls' lives. And it begins with that. Girls, and particularly from very marginalized communities, do not have the opportunity to go to school because of many gendered reasons, really. They are needed at home for household chores, they are needed at home for sibling care, they are needed at home to step in for their mothers, because the mothers go out to work. They are needed at home when the mothers die. Everyone talks about changing mindsets. How do you change them? Best way to change them is to start early and start in school. I think the success of our alumna is our biggest achievements, and they are all in reaching for the sky.
धीरे धीरे समझ में आया कि हाँ, हमें भी सपना देखने का हक है। बचपन में जब मैं छोटी थी गांव में, तो मम्मी हमेशा पर्दा करती थी, तो घूंघट करके सारा काम करती थी, तो वही एक्टिंग मैं भी करती थी। कुछ भी मिल जाए, उनकी साड़ी का पल्लू मिल जाए, कुछ भी मिल जाए, तो बस वही एक सपना था कि मैं भी दुल्हन बनूंगी, मैं भी ऐसे काम करूंगी। इसके अलावा कोई सपना नहीं था। सपने देखना मैंने यहीं से शुरू किया।
It's truly a very caring, welcoming place. It welcomes students, it welcomes their lives, including all their problems.
या ऐसे कपड़े पहनना या अपने बारे में सोचना या सपने देखना ये बिल्कुल भी गलत नहीं है.
And so at any given opportunities, teachers are alert. First of all, they're aware. Secondly, they're alert. And thirdly, they take the care enough to go out and help the girls face these problems.
मुझे लगता है टीचर्स को कुछ नहीं करना पड़ता है, सिर्फ उनको एक विश्वास दिलाना पड़ता है कि हम तुम्हारे पीछे खड़े हैं, किसी भी कंडीशन में हम तुम्हारे पीछे खड़े हैं. बाकी की लड़ाई तो वो खुद भी लड़ेंगी.
जो हम लोग हिंदी इंग्लिश सब्जेक्ट के रूप में पढ़ाते ही थे, उसके साथ साथ उनको व्यवहारिक ज्ञान देना भी शुरू किया. और वो तरीका था बातचीत का, क्योंकि हम इन लड़कियों को केवल पढ़ाई नहीं, केवल शिक्षा ही नहीं, सशक्त बनाना चाहते थे. सशक्त इस तरह से कि ये किसी भी जगह अपने जिंदगी में जाएं तो सही और गलत को पहचान सके, अपने निर्णय खुद ले सके, और अगर कहीं पर समाज में कुछ गलत हो रहा है तो उसके विरोध में बात कर सके.
If you want your education to be transformative, then you really have to examine the curricular content, pedagogy, the structure of the school, the ethos of the school, the culture of the school. And I think all of this conspires to make Prerna a transformative school, which I tried to capture in my book, Reaching for the Sky. That was wonderful. Ms. Sarup told me that Urvashi, the first school which she saw in her life, when a place where the students used to go very happily, was your school. So you obviously carry that torch very well, including the women's rights organization Suraksha and the initiative of education which you've got. Now, I'd like to invite Srimati Vasundhara, Raje, Urvashi, and Ms. Vrinda Sarup and Vikram Mehta to join us on the stage for Honorable Chief Minister to unveil and launch this book. I request Honorable Chief Minister Srimati Vasundhara Raje to say a few words.
Urvashi ji and friends from the Brookings, Vikram, Mr. Harshvardhan ji, Mrs. Sarup, Deepa ji, and everyone who's gathered here today. First of all, I want to really reach out to you, Urvashi ji, just to tell you what an amazing book you've written. And honestly, it's not because I know her, we're friends, and I've known the amazing work that she's done with us in Rajasthan, but it's also because I honestly started the book thinking I'm going to be reading something on education, and these are heavy books and it's going to take me time to get through it, and it was actually unputdownable because of the way in which you told the story. I mean, you were able to explain through these young girls, now some of whom I know, Lakshmi and Kunti and what was her name? Aarti.
Yes.
And there were 5 of them, if I remember rightly, Khushbu. And through these girls, I was able to understand that there was a life-changing experience that they had been through. I know that education makes a lot of difference to the lives of people and that it also empowers them immensely, but when you see it that close up, then you begin to wonder why more of it isn't happening. So I can only say today that Prerna, the girls' school that you started, because I started with the first study hall. And I thought to myself, I wonder how this evolved into Prerna. And then you tell the story, which is really quite amazing. And I see their first-hand accounts, and we walk through their lives, their triumphs and their tribulations, and we understand that this is not just a story, it's actually very real and terribly inspiring. And then, when we talk about the things that these girls have been through, I realize that there is some kind of resonance amongst a lot of us. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a family that could not afford or was not able to go to school, but the gender itself, at some point in time, made a difference to many of our lives. And while I was reading this, I thought to myself for a minute, and in fact, I tapped into what I thought was some of the reasons for that unanswered anger that is within me when I sometimes see it. And I remember the time when I had finished school and had done very well. We were first-class students, and I remember telling the family and my brother that just like you've been to Oxford and you've been outside and studied, I very much would like to go and do the same. I think the opportunity, because I really don't think I'm in a mood to get married right away. I would really very much like to. Of course, in our families, it was very much get married as soon as you leave school. Yeah, it's true. And when I suggested that I would very much like to go to Oxford or go abroad and study, I remember this very, very categorically turned around and said to me, you see, well, that's not for girls. And these are people who went to Oxford, who studied abroad, who were supposed to be very broad-minded and all that. So there is a chord that is struck between us all. This did happen. And they took a little bit of time, but they suggested that I might get left on the shelf, and that I got, at the end of it, so very nervous. I decided that maybe a better idea to quickly get married and listen to what they have to say than what happened at the end of the day. So, some went through the problems that they did. Some, despite the privileges, also experienced some of those problems. And I really don't think there's that much of a difference between us, but even in Rajasthan, which is a terribly feudal state, very patriarchal in that sense. Everything happens, and if you see the pictures, when they give you the pictures of Rajasthan, you always see a man walking wonderfully in front, completely unburdened with anything, and there's always the woman walking behind with that potli on her head, and obviously very much a beast of burden. So, things have changed. That's the good thing. It has to have changed because they couldn't have voted me as the Chief Minister of the state otherwise. So I really believe that some things have changed somewhere. And at the end of the day, that perhaps we have also played a role in working tirelessly to change that kind of thinking. And for that, I have to thank very much our department, because they have really worked ceaselessly for this and come with new ideas and new thoughts, brought it to the table, brought it for discussion. And so our secretary, Mr. Naresh Gangwar, is also here. I'm very glad to see him. But this could not have been done without our subgroup that actually picked up that torch and showed us the way. And amongst them was Urvashi. I remember very well bringing her and talking to her and asking her. And I thought to myself that maybe she won't find the time because they're so busy and there's so many things to be done. And that she had the burden of Lucknow and the huge state of UP, and that the chances of coming to Rajasthan would not be possible, but she took the time out. In fact, both the sisters did. So I'm really pleased to have them both with us. And I'm really, really glad that you joined that subgroup, because you also will be able to speak of the stories of Rajasthan. I was actually looking at your figures. You know, in your book you've told me that BPL, those below poverty line, in UP 70 million में से 203 million में से 70 million. In Rajasthan, of course, the figures are much less because it's only 10.3 million out of 59.8, which is not huge. The sex ratio also 928 as opposed to 908 of UP. And this is interesting, 0 to 4%, the children was 26% in Rajasthan, whereas yours is 20%. That's a huge number. And this is because, if you remember, there used to be those stories of how young girls in the families would be gotten rid of. So yes, there is a difference between what happened in UP and us. And there is a difference between the boys and the girls. And when you look at the literacy rates, there's a difference. We started very much behind. But I believe that we have made some very giant steps in the right direction. And I think that today, if more than 60% of the Gram Panchayats have got involved with 1 to 12 schools, which to date used to be done according to politicians. If you wanted a primary school outside your gate, you had it. Somebody else wanted a middle school outside theirs, they got it. And if you were very important, then perhaps you could get a 1 to 12 outside your gate. So all these things did happen, but today they have all been rationalized, and every Gram Panchayat is now in a position to actually teach and teach well. The teachers are available, which didn't used to be. And today we've made it clear that if the girls have to come, we have to make certain, well, we have to go out of our way to see that they are able to get their safety and security. So either using coupons, we bring them together and bring them to the school, or we give them bicycles for doing well in school. And if they do well in school, then they come in groups like they did walking to your school. So at the end of the day, these things, including empowering them with hostel facilities, as well as providing free sanitary napkins, because it's one of the reasons why the girls didn't come to school, because they thought that this is a very embarrassing moment in our life and we must drop out. So 11 to 14, there was a huge gap. But by doing this, we made it clear that this is not something that's part of life and nobody needs to get embarrassed about it. And there are dispensing machines now in schools which dispense this, and they just need to put the money in, take out their sanitary napkin and carry on with life as you in any school. And I think that all those things have made the difference. And just to add the icing on the cake, a little bit of defense training, and they're doing really well in that. There's, I think, kitne ho gaye? For more than 1.5 to 2 lakh, or there's a 3 lakhs?
More than 3 lakh.
More than 3 lakh girls, and now really you could meet them in the dark and they wouldn't be worried. In fact, you would have to be worried. So that's interesting. Then meritorious awards, which I think is very, very important for all the girls. And I'm happy to tell you now, both of you, that there are something like 8 lakh girls who have been given or have benefited under these schemes. And there's something that we have at birth, if you look after your daughter, and especially if it's institutional delivery, and if you send your child to, a girl child, to a governmental school, then you can in 12 years pick up 50,000 rupees from the time she's born to the time she leaves school. So that's a very big incentive for them to come to school. And we see to complete immunization while we are doing this, and that's another very important thing. And over 6 to 7 lakh girls have benefited from these things. But mostly we're looking at this 25 lakh that we give to those girls who have done very well for them to go abroad. So I was just looking at the 2 girls that have gone abroad. One, her father was a very small business. Mother used to be working with a toffee shop, somebody called Sujita from Banswara, which is one of my backward districts. She's now gone to the University of Minnesota, where she has done computer science. And she's now a teacher, what they call, helper, assistant teacher, yeah, an assistant teacher to one of the main teachers there, and that's a very big step up for her from some tribal district in that area. So it makes a lot of difference. Another one of them has also got that 25 lakhs and gone, and she's perhaps come second in the whole of the state in the 10th standard. And she's gone to California. She's in the University of California, and also now taken up a job there. So these people's lives have changed. And you're absolutely right. It makes that difference. And the fact that you have taken the first half of the day to study hall and the second half of the day to Prerna, I was just telling Naresh today, I think that if our teachers agree, so he said, if our teachers agree, I said, don't say that. Why would you ask for volunteers? So like Rekha became her volunteer and went into the slums and pulled out the kids and brought them, those who were not so well off, into the school, talked to the parents again and again and made them come to school. And it must have been a lot of work that she did. But it did change the lives of so many of these kids. So I'm saying that perhaps for us also it would be very good if we were able to bring that second half of the school in. Maybe we won't be able to have that many schools, but even if in every district or in every MLA constituency you were able to put up one such school, and you did it by asking for volunteers from amongst this huge army of 4 lakh teachers that we had, I'm sure some would be embarrassed enough to say, okay, we'll give back. We will give back to society. And I don't think it's going to be that difficult. Naresh said to me, what about timings? I said, what's your timing? He said, 9 o'clock. I said, hers is 7. So what happens? So we're going to have to tell them that what about, he says in summer we go to 7. So I said, well, what if we kept it at 7 for summer and winter? Instead of going to 9, we went to 8. Maybe we'd be able to take the other schools in. Then the problem is, can we do 35 minutes? I think we can, because I think again, if we brought them to 35 minutes and 6, as you know, what a big fuss there was over being able to do subjects, and they said 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I said, certainly not. So 35 minutes, and if we are able to bring them to that, I think that's a real step in the right direction. And we're not looking for more than, let's say, 100 schools to begin with. Let's start with that. And I think if we start with that, and then who better? We have somebody who has actually shown the way. And we've seen from the girls that it's made so much of a difference to them, and look at them, their smiling faces and confidence, and I think that's what we want in all our girl children. I don't think that there should be one Urvashi or one Vasundhara Raje or one Sarup or one Deepa. Why one? There should be many, many, many of us standing shoulder to shoulder with the rest of us, and I think that can be done. So, feminist consciousness. All right, no, I will remember that. I think it's a good word. What's the translation? Think about it in Hindi. We need to be able to put that in. But apart from any of that, I will say that everyone here, please take time out to read this book, because honestly, I will tell you, with that kinds of workloads, I thought to myself, I can't let her down because she's done such a great job, and so I must go through this nice, big, fat, thick book. But honestly, I couldn't put it down. And so if you will take the time out and read this, I think there would be an army of volunteers to work with some of us, to help us to, to change this for those who have been not so fortunate as us. So I really think that thank you for showing the light and for starting this and for working with us, because we in Rajasthan are very indebted. And so she started this by saying, I am really grateful to the Chief Minister for taking time out. I have to tell you, I said, how dare you have this book launch without me? So she said, I didn't think you'd have time. I said, I have only time. You just please call me. So I'm sorry, Vikram, I'm here in full glory. And I said to Mr. Ashwardhan, I insisted. I don't know what she did with the other chief guest, but but honestly, I am delighted. It's been my privilege, and really, I'm grateful that we have people like her working with us in Rajasthan, and I am hoping that we're going to make this a big army, and I hope that we're going to be able to create a situation whereby many, many, many young people come out as volunteers to work with us and change the lives of those who really have to suffer. You know, and are not so fortunate as us. So again, thank you and congratulations. Many, many, many good wishes. I know that everyone's going to run and congratulate you when they finish reading that book, so let me be the first to do that.
Well, the story which the Honorable Chief Minister just shared with you is completely correct. We didn't think you had enough time, but we are very grateful. And with energy, vision, support, and the kind of common movement towards a desirable objective, which at least I feel very encouraged with your speech to move, and if the book contributes even more, which we have just heard, we do look forward to that day in the not too distant future, when this book itself, starting with your vision, would have laid that kind of road map forward. And so thank you very much for these words. I now invite Ms. Vrinda Sarup, former Secretary, School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. She used to be this secretary, and now she's involved in other initiatives with a similar import. Ma'am, please. Thank you.
Honorable Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Vasundhara, Raje ji, Chairman, Brookings Institute, Mr. Mehta, Harsh, whom I'm very happy to connect after so many years as Executive Director of Brookings India, and of course my dear friend Urvashi. A completely dedicated educationist, and now of course a splendid wife. Is that okay? Thank you. Of course, let me first and formally congratulate Urvashi on this very, very significant event of her book launch. The book itself, and I think Mrs. Vasundhara Raje has described it in as much detail and so beautifully that I couldn't even attempt to do that. But I think the book has a powerful and splendid analysis of the gender issues which are there in Indian education today, and I would say perhaps in any part of the world. I must compliment Urvashi for this very succinct analysis and in bringing out very lucidly her own experiential learning in dealing with education interventions over a long period of time. I mean, many of us who have worked in the education sector know that there are some marvelous work which goes on in various parts of the country with very good initiatives. But to sustain something over a period of time, and as we see in the Prerna girls, there is a long-term end result which is coming out. So I particularly value this book because of its major contribution to something which is sustainable. The book, in my view, is probably, Urvashi, I feel now, an essential reading for any practitioner or researcher of education or development. And I sincerely feel this because it brings out not only the analysis, but it also has the how to do, which is very important. Friends, I thought I would highlight 3 issues which struck me as the best takeaways from what Urvashi and her team, as she says, it's not just my book, it's the team which contributed. But there are 3 certain very important takeaways which I would like to sort of dwell a little bit upon and indulge your patience. I think the first and foremost point that comes out is that schools must be responsive to the girls' needs. And if they are to have meaningful learning, this is very, very important. Whether it's Lakshmi, Sunita, Kunti, Aarti, Khushbu, I mean these names the Chief Minister of Rajasthan knows, but I think all of us in this room who've read this book would really, these are lodestars, they're shining examples of what is possible. And it brings out vividly how Prerna as an institution, and I think that's where the learning is, adapted what Urvashi calls the culture of schools. How can the culture of schools be made to change to be able to be effective in bringing learning to some of the most deprived, vulnerable, and girls who have been denied that value in education. So I feel this is wholly and squarely a central point which school systems, and I was delighted to hear the Honorable Chief Minister and immediately how she's transferring this learning in practicality on a large public system. So I think this is something which is in modern designs of schools, this is what we have to bring in. How do you design a school which has a culture which is nurturing and caring for girls or boys in a manner in which you have a more gender just outcome emerging? So I think this is perhaps one of the most important issues. If I look back, India has, of course, hugely expanded its education system. Its outreach for girls' education is tremendous now across the country. But if we are to convert that access, that ease of access which has perhaps been created already, into sustained learning and educational practices which will nurture and care and keep our girls in schools, I think that is where the systemic change is what we are looking for. Perhaps the second key feature which I would like to emphasize, and Urvashi does hammer it in through her various chapters, is that secondary education must be completed. Basic education, primary education is all right, but we must ensure that girls continue and are able to go on till class 10, I would say till class 11 or 12. That schooling period is very essential for completion, and the story of these girls also shows how flexible the system was to be able to catch them back into the system. And I think that makes the difference, that whatever is being taught in schools, not only in the academic chapter of life, but also in the life of how they are themselves growing, how their aspirations, their confidence, their self-assurance, that has to be sustained, and it takes time to break many of these stigmas with which we are born, disadvantaged or not disadvantaged, and it's over a period of time that these things can be addressed. So I think that is crucial. Thirdly, and I think it's very, very relevant, a point which has been made in the book, and the Honorable Chief Minister has also underlined that very beautifully, is that education, completion of education itself may not be empowering. It may not break those notions of patriarchy or notions of subjugation with which life continues and has been going on for so many years. So education itself must be empowering. And I think Urvashi beautifully brings out in her book that it has to be academics plus. And that plus must include a thinking capacity, knowledge of your rights, to be able to interpret, to be able to see your situations, to make choices from a position of information and assurance. These are not things which will come naturally to many of these girls who probably did not have it in our homes. Even the best of homes don't have this. So there has to be an intervention, a deliberate interventionist approach in schools. And that's again a very important thing for how schools are able to bring this without being strident, without being disruptive, but at the same time building that confidence and capacity to be able to engage with such issues. So, and this is something which I have always admired in Urvashi, that much of her work is steady and gets the same outcomes. It may not be as strident as it is in many other paths and schemes that we see. So I think this is probably the most significant aspect. But that leads us to the final question. I mean, how do you scale up? And very rarely does any author come down to that kind of analysis also. Very happily, Urvashi, I think her foresight and her practical groundedness, she's addressed this issue. And I think the whole book, the way it pans out, it brings out very clearly what I think she's inadvertently putting down, or perhaps advertently, that this is actually a model. It has certain non-negotiables which she distills and brings out. It's virtually like a ready reckoner. It's virtually like a manual, quote unquote, which any practitioner or any policy who is working on education and girls' education would be very happy to, should be very happy to internalize, and certainly necessary to internalize. And I think that is where the policy makers and practitioners' attention I would draw. Here we are talking of a huge change in the way we manage schools. How much autonomy do we give to our schools? How much of the managerial practices are we willing to change? And I think this huge shift is required from the olden systems to more futuristic systems, where the ultimate purpose is, whether you're playing with curriculum, whether you're doing teacher training, it has to infuse a mindset, again, to the culture of the school which we are seeking to change, which is to be caring, nurturing, and promotion of a more empowering role in education, so that our girls who come out, and we have 2 of them with us today, don't only step out that they can reach the sky, they should be in a position to say, I've touched the sky. So I think that's what it is. And I congratulate you once again, and thank you so much for this opportunity.